Today on Marketing Mavericks, we talk with the head of insights at Forbes about omni-channel, Facebook, being verified, and the marketer of the future. Coming up next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Marketing Mavericks is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This episode of Marketing Mavericks is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes hiring faster, easier, and cheaper. Post your job to 50-plus job boards with one click. Try ZipRecruiter with a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/MM. That's ZipRecruiter.com/MM. Welcome to Marketing Mavericks, where we talk about everything at the intersection of technology and marketing. Here, I'm your Tonya Hall, I'm your host, and we've got a great lineup today, including the Chief Insights Officer at Forbes, Bruce Rogers, and a couple of marketing pundits that are going to join us later in the show to talk about what's hot and what's not and what we're seeing in the space of digital marketing. First, let's get to our premier guest, which is Bruce Rogers. Welcome to the show, Bruce.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Joining us from the East Coast in New York. We were talking pre-show. Appreciate you connecting with us tonight. It's been a while. You and I have talked many times before, though.
We have, Tonya, so it's good to catch up.
And so just to explain to our listeners and viewers, what is a Chief Insights Officer?
That's a great question. I get that every time. One, it's one of those titles you get when you've been someplace for a long time. The other thing is that it actually describes what I do. I run a division of Forbes called Forbes Insights. So we do thought leadership research, bespoke research, and custom research, all around C-suite issues and high net worth. As you would expect, sort of the ability to have dialogue and information from folks that are very hard to get to. And then secondarily, I run what we call our CMO practice. So in my transition from, I used to run marketing, worldwide marketing for Forbes, and I kind of decided that the world was heading less from display advertising, and that the power of thought leadership, content creation, and distribution would be really the primary form of marketing in the future. So I made the leap from my day-to-day marketing job to running the Insights division. So that's what I do.
And you've been with Forbes a long time. I think the first time I had you on one of my shows was you were over branding the brand, and then you moved on to doing what you're doing today. But as you pointed out, you actually started as a marketer. And so I think, just from the perspective of being a marketer today and being a marketer back in the day, you've probably seen a lot of change, as we all have. And that probably helps you in kind of understanding the mindset of the CMOs and the thought leaders that you're interviewing, right?
Exactly. Well, one, I sort of lived the change myself, and I have the great fortune and honor to speak with literally hundreds of CMOs over the course of the year. So I really get to understand what their challenges are and what their pain points are. And really the major difference, and I'm talking about a difference that has really reached a sort of point of critical mass over the past 2 to 3 years. So I almost hate to use the word digital. It's digital marketing. I don't even know what that is anymore. It's just marketing. Because if it's not digital, it's not marketing. But I think the things that have changed and have made the job both increasingly a place of opportunity and excitement and of huge challenges. And go ahead.
Well, no, I was agreeing with you.
Oh, okay. So I think the major challenges. Digital has been talked about for a long time, but really the sort of disruptive, all-encompassing impact of digital is coming to full fruition over the past few years, and there's a bunch of confluence of events, not least of which are basic way we communicate more through social media and mobile devices, let alone the traditional ways to broadcast a message. And then secondarily, through the technology that is driving marketing innovation and the adoption of cloud technologies that are really coming together in a way that create powerful opportunities and ways to connect with customers, but also huge challenges in that they are also forces of disintermediation between marketers and customers.
Well, and it's funny because somebody in the chat room pointed out you kind of cringe at just this word digital marketing, and I would agree with you. I don't even like the term social media. And the thought leader, which I think I said, somebody pointed out in the chat room, I think they said 1984, which might be a little bit of a stretch, but it's true. And there are other phrases that we try to use to describe. One of the things that you said was this idea of bringing in all of the channels, and it's something that as marketers we talk about a lot, which is omni-channel, which is kind of this iteration of a multi-channel, but more global. Is omni-channel a word that the marketers you're interviewing understand? And are they using that? Are they using that as a point of approach towards their marketing, or are they very siloed? Are they focusing on, we need a mobile strategy, or or are they thinking of it in a broader sense?
So I think omni-channel is very much in the minds and at the forefront for most of the CMOs I talk with on both sort of executional issues and how you get a message across, how you create a dialogue, but also the whole customer journey. You now have the great fortune but huge dilemma of connecting with customers in real time across channel at the same time. They can be customers are in stores and shopping on their mobile devices, and so how do you connect those people? How do you even have a single view of the customer? That is a huge challenge for folks.
And I would agree with you. And I want to drill down on that a little later in the show, because I think that is probably one of the biggest challenges right now with trying to understand, where marketing meets technology and how you use messaging and create content. And I know Augie, who's joining us later, and Chris Baccus both have some points of views on that. I want to talk a little bit more about you. You talked about transitioning from marketing to brand to insights officer. I would say Forbes specifically is one of the brands that really understood, especially being in media, really understood how important it would be to transition your business to make a change internally. Tell us a little bit about what that conversation was like back in the day when you had to make that decision, when you decided not to sit back and let other people go first, other businesses, other media go first. You actually took the plunge early on.
Well, I'd say there were 2 points of transformation, to use an overused word. But, one was sort of the focus on developing a digital presence back in 1996 and splitting off the organization between a digital organization and a traditional print so that it would grow up on its own, and rather than be subsumed by print traditional ways of doing business. That sort of led to explosive growth in our online properties, but some very real and huge challenges happened along the way. One was the economic crisis in 2008 and 2009 that hit every media business, and every media business is under huge challenges. And then just at the moment that you think you are developing a business model that is right for the times, the business model changes pretty quickly in this space. And so, making money over through which is basically an advertising model. Advertising dollars were shifting into social media. To mobile devices, increasingly part of our traffic, and less dollars are not that less dollars, but you get less of a dollar in mobile today than you do. So huge challenges. And one of the huge points of transformation that we did, which was, I think, almost even bigger than we did in 1996, was in 2000, at the end of 2010, was really make the transition from a publishing model to a platform. And so what does that mean? It means instead of using digital means to broadcast content that our editorial team create, we create a platform for literally tens of thousands of people to be able to create content at the same time. That's my lovely cuckoo clock in the background. How about that?
It's real live television, everybody.
Yeah.
Broke your train of thought. Well, but okay.
So this the soundtrack for Mavericks, I guess. So the transition was to a platform, which is technology that allows us to publish massive amounts of content for literally tens of thousands of content creators, and to have that content be socially media optimized, SEO optimized, give content creators all the tools that editors had. So you break down the whole process of this hierarchical editorial, slow-moving process to literally, here's the tools, go publish, and it's live on the site literally minutes later. And it was a little bit of a leap of faith to be able to do that. And to do that would mean incorporating the voice of the editor, voice of this very large contributor base, over 1,500 contributors, and the voice of the marketer as well, who we provide the opportunity to publish on the same platform using the same tools as our editorial staff does, and that's something we call brand voice. So that was, for at least for a traditional media company, a huge Rubicon to cross. Maybe more like in the lines of Huffington Post or BuzzFeed. One wouldn't normally mention Forbes in those two companies in the same breath, but that's in fact, our platforms are not too different.
And I've talked about that with people before, about Forbes and how your model works, and it's certainly working well for Huffington Post. And I think there are a lot of other media outlets that could learn from what Forbes has done. How are you staying on top of things? I mean, what's next for Forbes?
Well, there's still a very active product introduction cycle in sort of constantly. You have to constantly reinvent yourself. The key for us is really, we've moved into a mobile space, but truly preparing for a mobile world. 40% of our traffic is through mobile devices, and that is has been increasing geometrically year over year. So the timeline isn't too far away where the vast majority of all traffic on the web will be via some sort of mobile device. And so, what is it? What service are you providing? It forces you to change your thinking about what it is you do. Just the way digital forced publishers to rethink what it is they do, mobile is really forcing the same thing.
Well, and it's huge. I mean, obviously, that's where I think many, not just brands, but even if you look at like Google and some of the, social communities aren't really capitalizing, and they're missing some of the opportunities that are available on mobile. I think the better we get at that, the better it is for the consumer. And I want to talk about something that you just released. It's your Forbes Insights Financial Marketing and Transition, which I was looking through and reading a lot of. You've got some really great material in here, and it was really interesting to see kind of the perspective of the various different heads of marketing. So let's kind of drill down on a couple of them. What was probably one of the biggest? Who's really capitalizing, in your opinion, on the changes and staying ahead of things and not afraid to maybe take those chances?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. I mean, one, a really brilliant CMO who I have a lot of respect for, Marty Willis at Oppenheimer, really is going through a true transformation process at her organization. And I think for tradition-bound financial service organizations, this is no small matter, and probably no small pain point for the organization, but a necessary step nonetheless. And that's really changing the mindset. I mean, for this whole study is really massively larger than just financial services, but I sent you as an example a cut of the study that we did very specifically focusing on the financial service sector. And so the financial service sector is sort of a place where marketing was not at the center stage of what was considered a driver of growth. It was a cost center or a sales support initiative. And they weren't the money makers in the organization, that either the, investment bankers or the analysts or the stockbrokers were, and still are, obviously. So it's not like a CPG company where, marketing is everything. Yet marketing is everything. And so how do you change that mindset? And I think Marty Willis is doing a fantastic job. I think also Mark McKenna at Putnam, I think some of the challenges that he's helped to overcome in a highly regulated environment where you have compliance issues and legal issues over everything you create. And so how do you become a real-time marketer? How do you use social media when a lawyer has to see everything? And so what he's done, and this seems simple, but he was the first person who ever, I think, mentioned to. He has a compliance officer sitting in marketing. So they're not the last in the line to get content creation and start to go through a legal process. They're right in the middle of it. And so they feel part of the solution, not just sort of the last line of defense for protecting, the company against legal issues and SEC issues. And so it's really folks who are relearning or helping their organization relearning what marketing is all about in today's world, which is all about real-time content creation, being in the stream of conversation, creating a dialogue, not broadcasting, not promoting to someone, but with someone.
And I think that's a great way to put it, having that conversation. And I want to talk more about that. I also want to talk about what the marketing organization in the future is going to look like, as well as some things that have happened recently with great advertising, bad advertising, and millennials. But before we do that, and we're going to bring in our other two guests as well, I'm going to actually talk a little bit about our sponsor today. Are you hiring? Do you know where to post your job to find the best candidates? Well, with so many job boards, who knows which one will produce the best talent? If you want to fill that position fast with the perfect candidate, you need to post your job on all the top job sites. Now you can. With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 50 plus job sites at once with a single click. ZipRecruiter also posts your job on social networks like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. ZipRecruiter will add your company logo and colors to make your job pages an extension of your business. You can add unlimited users to your account, create an instant job page on your website, and include a company careers page to use as a careers link. Yep, post once and watch the qualified candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. ZipRecruiter.com will automatically highlight the best candidates. You screen them, rate them, then hire them. That right person fast. Yep. Try ZipRecruiter and find out why they've been used by over 100,000 businesses. Right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free. 4-day trial. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/MM. That's ZipRecruiter.com/MM. And we thank ZipRecruiter for their support of Marketing Mavericks. We do thank ZipRecruiter, very much so, actually. Allows me to be able to talk all these great people, and it's great for marketers and hiring HR people and that sort of thing. So, okay.
We love sponsors.
We do love sponsors, and it's a great sponsor for our show, for example, because, I mean, it's a very difficult thing right now, especially with social media and trying to get the right candidates, and we've been talking about this for years and years. Certainly since social media started, you know, we're the best candidates now, and that's a whole nother show, really, who's keeping up with businesses that are understanding where to find them, and ZipRecruiter can help you do that. You know, I want to invite two more guests to join us for this conversation, and that is a return guest, which is Chris Baccus. He's the Executive Director of Digital at Golin. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, Tonya, how you doing?
Fabulous. And Augie Ray, who's the Director of Voice of the Customer Strategy at a Fortune 100 financial services company. Welcome, Augie.
Good evening. How you doing?
And, of course, we have the whole family here. We're all together. You know, Augie, Chris, I've had you both on the show many times, and you've got some great insight on some of the things that Bruce and I have been talking about when it comes to the evolution of marketing and with the challenges that CMOs and in fact, not just CMOs, but the other people in relationship to PR, communications, and that sort of thing are having with this evolution. And my next question I was going to ask, I wanted to bring the two of you in on it because I think both of you would have some good insight on this specific question. And that is, what does the marketing organization look like in the future? And Bruce, I'm going to ask you to go first on that. What does the future marketing department look like?
Well, first of all, when you think about the changes that have happened, let's just put this in perspective. Over the last couple years, let alone the last 10 years, and when you think that Facebook is only 10 years old, if you look at most organizations' org charts, they look like they did 50 years ago, you know, sort of head of marketing, you know, head of promotions, head of advertising, head of brand, head of, and I think the future organization is going to be all about orchestration, and that is the role of the CMO is as an orchestrator with, you know, kind of a superstar, highly skilled people who function around what we do, what we feel, and what we think. And it'll be much more matrixed and less hierarchical, and often there will probably be folks with, on the one hand, skills that are you know, beyond the expertise of any one CMO, but at the same time, the CMO, I think the big difference is now is that CMOs need to be like the leader of an orchestra. You know, you need to be able to, you know, every instrument, you know how it's supposed to be played, you know how they're supposed to weave together, and I think that is the big challenge for CMOs. But I think the organization is going to be more focused around content creation, around around data, and I think those are two areas in which there aren't great skill sets currently in many more marketing organizations. And so I think that's going to be a huge challenge, finding the right people. There's always been great storytelling, if advertising is a form of storytelling, but sort of the journalistic skills.
I think I could probably imagine that Augie and Chris are just chomping at the bit to jump in on this because I know how you both feel. So I'd say, Augie, what would your point of view be about this idea that you have to be able to do everything, create content, be a management? What is the marketing future look like to you?
Well, it's interesting. I think if you'd asked me that question several years ago, I would have talked about the growth of earned media and the way that earned, owned, and paid had to put together. But what we're actually seeing now is that organic reach is shrinking, right? You see that happening on Facebook. You hear people complaining about that their blogs, their corporate blogs are not getting enough traffic. That Twitter is not delivering what they wanted it to. And it's interesting. I'm going to be a little bit of a contrarian. I think that the marketing department of the future looks a lot like it does today, which means that it's about paid media. Now, the way we do paid media is going to be wildly different when you look at the growth of demand side and supply side sorts of tools that allow for a marketplace that is programmatic instead of people filling out IO orders. So I think the marketer of the future is a technician. It's all about where do I get my message to the right people at the right cost, and that changes moment to moment. So it's not about sitting there and talking to an ad buyer and necessarily worrying about the creative. It's about getting the right program in place so that your advertising can flow where it needs to.
Okay, Chris, do you have a rebuttal to that?
I do a bit. Yeah, I mean, I'm used to Augie being a contrarian on some of this stuff. So I expected that. That's just natural, right? And that's why I love you, Augie. But it was interesting, and Bruce, you bring up, kind of the think, feel, do perspective. I was just reading Harvard Business Review. Their front cover this month is really about this whole idea of the new ways of marketing. And it really brings in a lot of what you're just saying, which is it's about content creation. It's about storytelling, but it's beyond really storytelling in just simply an ad campaign way. Marketing organizations really are focused today on mostly being about awareness. How do we go ahead and get the new message out there? How do we release the new product? There's not a lot of flipping the funnel per se, as my friend Joseph Jaffe really says, about what retention's about, what, kind of the brand advocacy is about, and how we really kind of bring that into the marketing organization. It's been sitting inside some of the social organizations, some of the customer service pieces. And when I read, kind of this new space of marketing of think, feel, do, a lot of it is about being a content, provider and editor and really kind of adding in a lot of stuff that you were talking at the beginning of the show, but doing it in a way that's much more comprehensive than just simply being an awareness vehicle with your main primary awareness ad campaign. So if we are really truly going full circle in customer experience and where marketing has touch points for it, I think there's more than just simply, buying enough ad space on TV or enough Facebook ad units to go ahead and tell a complete picture that really connects with customers all the way through, the purchase funnel and the post-purchase funnel.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, let me just say this. I have for 10 or 15 years been waiting for the marketing organization to make the turn that we're talking about here, to worry about experience. And I would argue that the fact that most Fortune 100s now have a chief experience officer that is not the CMO points to the failure of the CMO to direct the marketing department where it should go. And I'm not disagreeing with Bruce and Chris here in any way in terms of where it ought to go. But I keep looking at what the CMO cares about. And I ask these really simple questions of people, which is, what does the CMO care more about? Does he care more about acquisition or does he care more about reputation? Well, acquisition. Does the CMO care more about sales or do they care more about relationships? Well, sales. And unless marketing can make this shift, then the CMO is going to be the chief paid advertising officer in the organization, and people like the chief experience officer and the chief customer officer and the head of customer experience or customer care are going to have a lot more to do with the feeling and the touching than the CMO is. So until I start seeing more CMOs make the shift we're talking about and actually be able to in their organization. I know where I want marketing to go, and I agree with everyone on the line here where it should go. I'm not seeing it move that way.
Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about something that Chris brought to my attention, which I hadn't actually seen, but it was a great ad, and I want to talk a little bit about that as well as what wasn't a great ad. So first, let's start with the Newcastle Brown Ale, which was basically, I think, Chris, you called it, the British actually scored the best ad for the 4th of July, right?
They won Independence Day, right?
They won Independence Day. I know, Patrick. Hey, let's go ahead and play that, the B-roll for that.
Happy 4th of July, America. Ready to fire up the grill and celebrate our victory over the Brits? Well, I'm not. Because despite that incredibly convincing American accent, I'm one of those Brits. Now, I've acted in film and TV for years, but my greatest performance is acting like I don't care that every summer you gobble down tube sausages and celebrate kicking our arses, or butts, as you say, incorrectly. Do you really still have to celebrate your emancipation from us? I mean, that's like your girlfriend breaking up with you and then celebrating with fireworks. Every year. For 300 years. It gets my goat. But what really gets my goat is imagining how great America would be if we were still in charge. Oh, America, if we'd won the war, you'd have better comedy, news, TV programs, and way better rude words. Oh, I'm talking fanny, trollop, minger, tar, minge bag, bleeding, sodding, blooming, cocked up, get stuffed, and of course, wanker. Imagine how sophisticated you'd sound when you're insulting someone. Oi, Brad, your wife's a slag! Now piss off, you wanker! See how classy that sounded? With our accents and your American self-confidence, you'd be unstoppable. Yeah, you'd have to pay a few more taxes, but you can't put a price on that. Great Britain, too, would be the greatest country on earth. Your lawyers would all wear powdered wigs, so criminals really respect them, and you'd have all the mushy peas you can stuff down your bloody great gobs. Oh, and if you get sick, you don't need to worry about medical insurance, because with the National Health Service, a doctor will see you for free in about 2 years. Plus, your taxes would be spent on things you really need, like a royal family who do the tough jobs no one else wants to do, like being driven around in a really nice car while waving. You'll want to eat some apple pie, then shoot some hoops and have a hoedown? F***ing bollocks.
I love that ad.
Grab a Newcastle.
And it is about creative. It's about really understanding how to engage your customer. I mean, this is something that was obviously a professional ad and really done well. Chris, why do you like this so much? Why does this work besides making us laugh?
It creates a different space within it. So, you know, the typical 4th of July stuff is, and you saw it on Twitter with all the real-time marketing things of, you know, American flag this, fireworks that, you know, how do you really kind of own something a little bit different? And so I think Newcastle said, hey, let's try to imagine a different kind of world and kind of bring up how ridiculous this whole celebration is after you know, whatever beat us over several centuries ago. So, you know, it's just a great way to kind of create a cognitive difference and do it in a fun way with, you know, a great British actor and one of my favorites from the former BBC Office, which was the really great version of The Office, if you ask me.
You know, and I think it's so challenging for agencies to understand what's that perfect, you know, combination of comedy and, I mean, is this going to make their sales go up? Are people going to want to start drinking the beer? I don't know. But it is great. I think it's great advertising.
Well, you can't say I don't know. It's not great advertising unless it does that, which is the point.
Exactly.
See, now you're making me be. Yep. Listen, piss off, you wankers. You're making me be the obstinate guy again. Last year, the most viral video in branding was Kmart Ship My Pants, and it had zero impact on Kmart continuing to bleed market share. And so Might they sell a couple extra 6-packs with this? I guess. We'll find out. I am sure they will have a good story to tell because marketers always do at the end of the day. But I question all this stuff. It was funny. We all shared it. It will get millions of views. But much like Ship My Pants, my question is, will it do that much for Newcastle? I'm not convinced.
Well, and I think that's an excellent point. I think, there's also some advertisers who haven't done a great job and have been in the press in an awkward way. We talked a little bit about this before the show, but American Apparel is another one. Tell me a little bit, Chris, what do you think about the recent mistake that they made using a picture of the Challenger, thinking it was fireworks, to promote themselves on social media? I mean, it was a horrible thing to do. Do you think this was a publicity stunt? Do you think it was truly a mistake? I mean, is this a PR, nightmare, or is it something that, because they like to get attention, right? I mean, we follow their advertising. It's racy. It's questionably disturbing even at times. What do you think? What say ye, Chris?
Oh, yes. Well, we're littered with their advertising all across LA on billboards, and I always wonder where those poor girls are. They look like they're trapped in a closet somewhere and someone needs to rescue them. But fortunately, the piece here, honestly, I looked at the articles about kind of American Apparel's reaction to it. I think what they did was they simply blogged or retumbled a post out there that an artist had redid of the Challenger explosion. I don't think they realized that artist rendered something from the Challenger explosion. They just saw kind of a cool red and white explosion that kind of, had a different feel than the typical fireworks image that they probably found on Google Images or found on a Tumblr search. So this feels more like a bad social content reblog issue and a bit of obviously a PR issue more than anything else. And there's really no greater story that's being told here. And so I could beat Augie to it. I don't think they sold any more or less product because of this particular post, but maybe less.
Now how am I going to agree with that? No, they sold tons of product. Well, my argument.
Bruce has got some expressions going on. Go ahead, Augie.
Well, their response was that the person who was responsible for tweeting it wasn't even alive during at the time of the Challenger explosion, which begs the question: why is your corporation leaving primary and direct access to communication mechanisms to people who are so young they can't even know what they're doing? Which opens up the whole sort of line of questioning about, should a 25-year-old run your social media strategy? And I always argue that you wouldn't leave your PR strategy or your television strategy or your corporate communication strategy to a 25-year-old. Why would you leave your social media strategy? But I still think it comes back to, and I have to ask the question, had they posted something good with a picture of clouds, would that have sold any panties to 15-year-olds that seemed to be their models? And my question would be, no, I don't think it would have. And the fact that they posted this picture and got a lot of bad PR, does it mean that they're going to sell one less pair of panties? And I would argue, no. This is a tempest in a teapot both ways, because companies were supposed to approach social to say something. And in fact, what they're now doing is proliferating accounts. And instead of saying, what do I want to say? They're saying, oh my God, I need 4.8 posts today because that's what everyone tells me I need. And they're just finding crap to throw out there. I am so disturbed by the vast majority of social media strategy nowadays. It really bothers me. And I don't think it's amounting to something. I think companies are spending a lot of money chasing after things and not getting much from it.
I would agree. And I mean, but really, Augie, it doesn't just sex sell. I mean, I may think their advertising is incredibly distasteful and disturbing, but to your point, are they selling more panties because they are getting in the media, getting our attention? I mean, we're talking about it, right?
If they had stuck with hot young models, it might have sold. Pictures of bright clouds and exploding shuttles, not so much. That's not sex, right?
It isn't. What would you say to that, Chris?
Well, to defend the 20-something-year-old who probably posted this, I'm 42 and I was in middle school when the Challenger explosion happened. I don't think I'd remember what the cloud formation looked like. And so I'm not sure I would recognize that as the Challenger explosion within the artist rendering and manipulation that happened with the artist here.
You youngsters.
Yes, exactly. Oh. Yeah, so maybe we need older than me even to do the social media. So where's that line? Is it 45, 55? I just need to know. But
I don't know.
So in defense of a few 20-year-olds.
being young is no excuse for being dumb. So
I agree. And
that.
how big of a challenge is that, though, Bruce? I mean, when you think about a PR nightmare, which I think could be a mistake. I mean, I question American Apparel because I think they want attention. I don't know. I've a little. It's a little shady. But what about those brands who genuinely aren't, don't intend to make a mistake? Are the CMOs and the elite the people that you're talking to, are these guys nervous about it? And what are they putting in place when something like this does happen?
Well, I think the huge transition has been from handing over social media to the youngest person in the marketing organization because they must know something about it. I mean, that hopefully has come to an end, and that you have trained professionals who know what they're doing and have are creating content based on data that informs them on what is working and what's not working, and what is appropriate and what's not appropriate. So I don't think it's an age thing anymore. It's a professionalism. I also think that social media has moved, is embedded in everything the organization does. So I don't think the idea that there's the social media persons, I think is changing as well. And the other thing is, the thing that CMOs need to worry about most is something like this, because it's this is what keeps them up at night. It's not a tightly crafted commercial that 40 people have seen and signed off on and legal compliance has approved. This is in the moment conversation. So you have to live in a world of transparency. And to do that, you need to train everyone in the organization how to behave in a world where everything you do and say is public.
I think that we've seen that. It was certainly, and this was brought up in the chat room, but I think I talked to somebody about this before the show. It makes me think of a little bit like Abercrombie and Fitch, and, they're not really understanding the customer and potentially just, for whatever reason, being out there and being public in not such a connected way. Augie, there's two conversations here. One is connecting to the customer and understanding what they really want and not just trying to get, PR or attention. And the other is something that Bruce just said, which I know you feel really strongly about, and that's getting people within your organization to understand. And I know we have had many conversations over the years about this, but getting the people in your organization to understand how to be more connected with your customer using social media. What's still the biggest challenge that you see, Augie, with this conversation?
Well, of course, I'm in financial services, so that's a whole different question for me, actually, because it's very difficult to unleash social media in a financial services firm because of all of the limitations on what people can or can't say. So, when I look outside of financial services, I look at companies like Zappos, which has done a good job of sort of opening up social to all employees and really getting a lot of benefit from it. In a more professional setting, I think IBM has done a wonderful job of that. They allow people to blog and encourage them to blog and create all these networks. And so the thing that I find frustrating is when social media gets locked up in the marketing function as some sort of a marketing approach that we are going to deliver awareness. And if you look at the way social media works, it's kind of a lousy awareness delivery vehicle. It's much more a loyalty delivery vehicle. And so the idea of then opening this all up so that more people in the organization can use it to collaborate with their customers and with others, so that more people can be offering customer care in a way that allows to the support and transparency. These are the things that to me are interesting about social media in the future, and not about what the CMO begins to do with the primary corporate Twitter account.
I couldn't agree more. Social media connected customer care is probably one of the strongest areas of social media.
So, okay.
I'm not going to disagree with that. I was responsible for that at USAA for a while until I left USAA. So, and I'm actually in the World Service Department of the company I'm in now. So I absolutely agree with that. I think, in fact, we talked earlier about what the CMO should be doing in the future. I have always argued that the CMO needs to be thinking much more about the experience. The brand is conveyed at least as much in how people answer the phone and answer questions that consumers have,
Exactly.
and in the way the product is used, in the way the packaging works. All of those things have as much of an impact on the brand as anything that you do nowadays in television or radio or even social media. And so the smart CMO has to care about all these touch points, and they have to become consultants within the organization. And this is where I want to see it go. Like I said earlier, and I won't belabor the point, I just don't see many CMOs doing that.
Yeah, they're few and far between, but it's the concept of marketing from the inside out.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I think we all agree that's where it needs to go, which is we kind of went full circle, I think, where we are after kind of Bruce was just being interviewed solo on the show. So I think we're back to that point. That's where the future is kind of going. Hopefully that's where it becomes. But you're right, Augie. I mean, it's not really the day-to-day priority of the CMO as it stands today. And then I think there's a few organizations where there's some adoption of changing that, and wherever we look at some innovations, that looks like where there might be some good trends and a strong place for where that's going to happen.
Okay, let's talk about something I know, Augie, you asked specifically that we talk about, and we have talked about it on the show, but I think it's we're talking about, the agencies, we're talking about the brands. But let's talk about where where some of this advertising is communicated, which is social communities, specifically Facebook, and this idea around trust. Recently, Facebook, more than ever, broke our trust a little bit because they exposed something they did, which was to provide for a period of time. They provided us either negative or positive feed and news feed in our Facebook pages, and we've talked about it several times on the show and on a lot of other Twitch shows. But it's something that I think people have a completely different opinion on. Even when we talked about it last week on Marketing Mavericks, we had some people on the, hey, it's much ado about nothing, and others that said, well, if we say that about this now, what's going to happen to us in the future? And I say, which we didn't talk that much about, what does that mean for brands, and what does that mean for businesses who are using Facebook? I mean, how much are they going to be able to manipulate in the future? What do you say, Augie, since you're the one that wanted to talk about this?
Well, I think we can belabor the point because people have been talking about it for the last week. But the thing that I wanted to mention, and I'm curious what the others on the show here think, is that there's been so much discussion about whether this was ethical. And I believe in ethics, so don't take this the wrong way. But I don't care if it was ethical. I care whether it was a smart thing for Facebook to do. And so, here is a company that seems invincible, and maybe it is, although this would be the first company in history that could survive endlessly without having trust or satisfaction. And I think Facebook should start worrying about that. And you go back to Beacon. Was it called Beacon? Or am I mixing this up with Apple now? But
Beacon, yeah.
Yeah, the beacon, the tracking, and of course they ended up having to settle with the federal government and allow oversight. And then they started turning people's posts into paid advertising, and they ended up settling a class action lawsuit over that. And some people feel that Facebook made a commitment not to sell their information to marketers, and they recently said they were going to do that. And then along comes this research study where it turns out that they manipulated peer-to-peer communications. And all of this says to me, here is a company, and you can look at the American Customer Satisfaction Index, which says that Facebook is among the least, has the least satisfaction of any organization in the country, ranking as low as like the IRS. And yes, people keep cramming on more time and more posts, and so maybe it's completely invincible. I just think that if word of mouth matters, and we all say that it does, that Facebook cannot continue down this path endlessly. And if they want to do something other than just advertising, and I would like to believe that they want a second revenue stream and not be a one-trick pony, they need to begin to develop trust. And they are far from doing that. And so they've got to get smarter about this. And this is the stuff that I think matters more than the ethics of that research study.
I definitely think it was unethical, but it scares me what potentially could happen in the future when people are blindly following. I mean, I think, who was it? Natalie Morris last week said, well, what happens if, you decide, if all of a sudden they decide to feed us a specific type of news? If you only watch one point of view, what does that mean, and how does that change the way that we feel about something? It's one thing for it to be advertising us. We know we're being advertised to. It's another thing when we think that that's the majority of the way.
What if the oil industry starts paying Facebook to only show pro-fracking posts, right? I mean, so many marketing experts have compared this to A/B testing, and it annoys me because if you want to test your own communications to consumers, you can go ahead and do that. You're in control of that. That's fair. That's ethical. But you can't A/B test peer-to-peer communications because that's where you get on very, very thin ice. And so I do think it opens up some troubling questions about where Facebook could go, especially, again, as I mentioned, I still believe Facebook stock is going to be much lower than it is. I know that advertising has been growing rapidly, but its price earnings ratio is through the roof yet, and it still needs to be multiples more profitable. And I worry what happens when Facebook gets a little more desperate to support its stock price when it has done nothing whatsoever to diversify its business model.
Well, there you have it.
Feel free to disagree, guys. Sorry.
I'm gonna be a little
selling short
contrarian.
too. No problem.
Everybody's jumping in.
I'm going to be a contrarian here.
Okay.
I think, I think one, people are hugely conflicted, and about this whole issue. It's like privacy issue. It's everybody wants privacy except for, if you give a free Starbucks card, they'll give you, their social security number. So, I think it's a little overdone on the Facebook, Schadenfreude right now. I think Facebook has, a 10-year run ahead of it that, but the one beautiful thing about technology disruption is that someone could come along who, could take the game away from them. And maybe maybe ethics will be the thing that it is, because that seems to be a bit of a blind spot for them.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that is going to hurt them in the long run. And, there can always be game changers. We've seen it happen before. I mean, is anybody still on MySpace? Just checking.
Right.
I'm still on MySpace. I don't know my password, but I'm still on MySpace. Anyway, so we agree that Facebook has, certainly hurt our trust a little bit. What about, this idea again that we have to rely on these social networks for trust? And it was brought up. So I have to say this. One of the people that I follow on Twitter is William Shatner. William Shatner went on a rant last week about wanting to get people verified on Twitter. So, so Facebook has their own verification, Twitter has their own verification, and his rant was actually that he wanted all of the red shirts, if you know what that means, from Star Trek to be verified. And so he was like, unverify me, and he kind of created a scene, which he typically does. But it started me thinking, what does it really mean to be verified? And then Facebook has their own verification system. What does that really mean? I mean, as a consumer, am I not trusting someone because they aren't verified? Is there some sort of priority status for those people who are verified? What do you say about that?
I think a lot of it was mostly done around celebrities and personalities. I mean, It was just to help when the audience needed to know if that was the real. It wasn't Charlie Sheen that got verified within hours of his whole kind of craziness story breaking a couple of years ago.
Tiger Blood,
he didn't
wasn't
really
it?
have a Twitter account. Yeah, Tiger Blood. That was it. Yeah,
He had an agency, though, advise him and help him with that. That was actually a really successful. He's crazy, and it didn't get him hired. But it was a really successful media blitz for him because he did do some things that, didn't get him hired back, but he got a lot of attention. We were all talking about it for quite some time. Right, Augie?
If being not hired and being talked about is a goal, then it was wildly successful. I don't know many people that want to invest in that.
Well, is it important to be verified? I mean, are you guys verified? Are you verified, Bruce?
I am not.
I would like to be verified. I've asked a couple of times. I think the little check mark matters. Interestingly enough, I'm just going to very quickly mention and give it back to Bruce. Be careful, because there is a scam being run on Facebook that is targeting pages, that somebody has started a page called Verified Pages using the Verified Pages tick mark that you see on Facebook, and is convincing people to turn ownership of their page over to it because they think it's Facebook, and it's actually then they're losing control of their own pages. So interestingly enough, as we talk about verification, you have to be careful about who you trust through verification.
That's a good point. But there's always some sort of scam. I'm always a little bit leery of what I click on, and sometimes I don't click on things that are from sources I don't really know well. And I don't click on the social communities stuff either. So
there's always going to be scams. The verification is really for the celebrity, I think, sector of social media. I'm not quite sure if it matters one way or the other.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that I think, at least with Twitter, one of the reasons that if you notice, in fact, this is what William Shatner was talking a lot about on Twitter, was he was upset that social media people, marketing people, and reporters had verification. Specifically, reporters and social media people had verification on their Twitter account. And there you go. And he was upset about that. But I think it's a trusted source. I think they're doing it the right way. I think they're using, hey, we know this person actually works for, this company. They're a legitimate reporter. You can trust, if you trust that resource, you can trust this person actually works there. I think there's some truth to that, especially when you have a lot of people impersonating other people. I've had it happen to me, which is really weird, to find a Twitter page. It's got your picture and your name, and it's not you. So it can happen.
That's disconcerting.
Slightly.
But there's always going to be people who try to game the system. So a bit of caveat emptor.
That's true. So, okay. So, we're going to run out of time, but there's a couple more things I do want to talk about. And one is what's next. So, what are we looking at right now for, this standpoint of social media? I mean, we're talking about platforms, and we talk about, how we're using them to be more omni-channel, which is a term that we're utilizing that says basically we need to become more unified. What do you think? What's next, Augie?
I just think what's next is going to be a little bit of a pullback of social media. I predicted at the beginning of this year that this was going to be the year where marketing was going to take a hard look at shrinking organic reach, the fact that it's becoming simply more of a paid channel, and some of the things we talked about earlier. The customer care counts as much as marketing in social, demonstrating that you care for the consumer, that you're responsive. Those things create your brand as much as, funny pictures of puppies and squirrels eating burritos or whatever the hell it is brands are posting nowadays. And so I actually think there's going to be a reassessment of social media and where it belongs in the organization. And I really do hope that it becomes more about opening up the organization, as we talked about earlier, transparency, customer care, and a little less about, who can go viral, because you look at some of the viral successes of the past and you look at some of the antiviral successes of the past, the mistakes, and they don't seem to have that much impact on the brand. And I think it's time for the CMO to think a little bit about the investment they're making.
Bruce, what do you see coming up next? You're talking to all the leaders out there. What do you see?
Well, the way I see it is that data sets you free. And so I think marketers need to go back to understanding what are the drivers of business growth, and a little bit of what Augie was talking about. Social media only works if it works to drive people through some sort of decision-making process to buy your service or product. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. And how much resources and money do you put to it? All marketing organizations have to get to a point where data shows them what works and what doesn't, do more of what works. And I know it sounds simple, but it's amazingly challenged right now, especially across so many channels to choose from. But I think that is going to be, there'll be pullback in some places, there'll be investment in others, and I think there'll be a fuller understanding of how all of these elements work together.
I love it. Data sets you free. Okay, Chris, you know, what are you seeing? What are you paying attention? What's on your radar?
God, so much great stuff there. Definitely agree with Augie. This whole shift of reassessment of social media is a big piece. I think we've gotten way too focused on optimization of what's a perfect post in Facebook. That really hasn't panned out to really add a lot of value to what's going on with the brand and the company, and really create interest in revenue and sell through. So we need to get back to really reaching audiences. Social media is really about distributed content. It's also about finding new avenues for your brand to engage with consumers. And it's not always about the audience that you've built in social media on the social channels. It might be more about, people who've built an audience of their own that really connects with your audience in a strong way. I was at VidCon a couple weeks ago for all the YouTube fans and content creators out there. And I tell you, it was like Blog World like 4 or 5 years ago, but with fans at the event. And it was like a Justin Bieber concert, or what I imagine a Justin Bieber concert would have been like at his heyday. So, there's so much excitement. There's some really great content in social media. And I think brands are going to start kind of looking at, where we really could kind of engage in a really rich way with some of these people getting a lot of fame.
Chris, I think you just admitted to going to a Justin Bieber concert. Don't even try to backtrack out of that one.
That's what I heard.
I had not. What I imagined. I
tweeting that right now.
Yeah. I'm all right. Whatever.
I think the other. I think the enduring movement is something I heard Keith Weed, who's the CMO of Unilever, sort of say very eloquently, which is that we're transitioning from marketing to what we used to do broadcast to with, which is social media, to for. So what is it you do for your customers? How do you make people's lives better? I think that is where marketing is headed. I think this idea that you can just, beat people over the head and communicate with them constantly 24/7 has to find some level of saturation.
Yeah, Bruce, listen, I love that. I mean, I really do. And I've been talking about that when I go out and speak about the value of purpose. And you look at these books, Good to Great and Can't Buy Me Like, there is so much evidence that standing for something, that consumers knowing that your organization cares for consumers or stands for something. My only question to you is that really the marketing department's job? It might be to communicate it, but is it really the marketing department's job to create that purpose? That's got to come top down.
I agree, but I think yes, that increasingly I am seeing little differentiation between what should be a CEO's role and a CMO's role. Although oddly enough, not very many CMOs have made it to the CEO spot. But it's almost CEO like, or almost. Maybe it's too big for any one person.
Well, I think those titles are changing. I mean, is there really a CMO or a C? I mean, like what? I think it's this evolution of running our company and what understanding what the role is changing. So the title is going to change too, right?
The title's going to change. Someone has to be responsible for being the vision for the company. And that typically is the CEO. I don't know if it's not the CEO, then who is it? And CMOs or heads of marketing have been charged with carrying out that vision through the marketing channels. But I don't see that changing. I just think that the difference is that we live in a world of ultra transparency, so that you can't hide behind advertising. People, there's no amount of advertising that overcomes, the bad that you do in your organization. So, and people talk about it and have a broadcast platform to tell the world about every little indignity that they suffer as a result of some lack of service or product deficiency.
We've been saying that for years, Bruce. But my question to you is the airlines have, I mean, any of the airlines, we could go on and check Twitter today, and they will all have 500 indignities that have been posted. How has it hurt? You've seen McDonald's stumble time and again in social media, McD stories and all sorts of problems in social media. You know, how has it hurt? You've seen BP destroy the Gulf Coast. How has it hurt? I mean, we say these things matter. I keep looking for the evidence. I really do. And I want to believe. I mean, I've been in social media 6 years. I want to believe. I sound like I'm on the X-Files now. But I keep seeing these firms doing the same bad things and people tweeting the same frustrations. And year after year, they're still making money. They're still turning profits. They're still doing pretty good.
Unlike David and Goliath, I think it does take time with a larger brand. You talked about McDonald's. You also talk about there's a lot of other brands out there that are, you know, have established themselves. And so it's not going to be just potentially one incident or one thing that happens that really turns their business around. I think it's more of a consistency in behavior and taking away that over time. You can, I don't know, what do you say to that? I mean,
we've been doing the social media thing for 6 years now. I mean, how much longer do we need? Right? I mean, we've got.
But you mentioned McDonald's. That's like saying, I mean, it's one thing for, you know, a small mom and pop shop to get some bad Yelp reviews and do something really crazy, which we've actually seen happen, that could potentially hurt their business. And sometimes bad PR can actually help a business, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I've been talked a lot, as you know, on my blog and when I go out and speak about United Breaks Guitars, which everyone universally uses as that touchstone of how terrible, of how companies are now beholden to the consumer who has a voice bigger than the company. And look, this guy who nobody had heard of created a YouTube video, United Breaks Guitars, and brought the big giant to his knees. And yet, if you look at the way the stock performed the year after that, United outperformed their competition by more than 100% on the stock market. And so you look at Bank of America and Bank Transfer Day, and at first what you heard was people were leaving Bank of America, and you saw the entire credit union industry in the United States announced they had picked up something like $100 billion of deposits that month. And people said, see, this is the power of social media. Only if you looked at the quarterly results for Bank of America that quarter, they picked up 5 times the number of deposits that the entire credit union industry picked up in that same quarter. And so I keep looking for the impact. I do. And I want to believe. I think it's small companies it hurts. I think small unknown companies can get a boost with the right viral video. You know, we've seen that. But I just think the big companies, they just keep chugging along through it all. All the bad PR, all the bad tweets, all the frustration, they float above it.
Well, look, I'm speaking from the capitalist tool. So I'm not saying this because it's a good thing to do. It's a right thing to do. It's a thing to me. It's a business decision that will that results in better market share and better results. I think that's what's going to happen. I think it will over time. And I think, well, one, McDonald's has created a whole social media reaction team as a result of that, and actually now has a very good reputation in social media. United and Bank of America are might be a little bit different because they are almost monopolies in some sense. You know, if you want to fly somewhere that United goes, you fly United, whether you enjoy it or not. But I think for most companies, I think that's a point of differentiation that will help them earn outsized market share.
I hope you're right. I just look for it. Chris, what do you think?
I know Chris is silent.
Well, I think there's many things and many activities that happen. I mean, social media is just one aspect of it. I think the biggest issue with kind of, looking at, earnings and the overall impact on the company is social media still reaches a fairly small audience, even with paid. And so, there's a lot more impact from a lot of other traditional channels and other ways that people are getting their message and feeling how they feel about a company. And social media is just a part of that piece. And then, to the point of, like McDonald's and disclosure, McDonald's is a Golan client, of course, and has been since the inception of Golan too. But, they do a lot of different kind of content out there. And I mean, you look at stuff like the World Cup that just happened. They did an unbranded piece that they got a lot of recognition for, and kind of bringing kind of that happy kind of quotient to pieces and really getting to content that people want and enjoy and leaves a positive impact with the brand. That, there's many things that happen across social media for large brands. So yeah, you're right. One isolated incident isn't going to really have that great of an impact with so many activities happening.
I agree. And I also agree that the airline industry and some others are a little different, because anytime you feel like you have a monopoly, trust me, I'm a girl that came from the cable industry, and nobody loves to hate their cable company or their utilities more, right? But, when you have to rely on a specific provider of a service or a product, you don't have a choice. You can choose where to buy your hamburger. You can't choose necessarily all the time where you can fly. So just saying, who you fly with, I should say. Gosh, you guys were great. I would love to just talk all night, and we could do that summer party. But but we do.
Honey, I'm having a slumber party with 2 guys and another girl. Yeah, no, that's not gonna work. Sorry, Tonya. It sounds wonderful though.
Yeah.
Chris, you can bring Justin.
Oh, great. Yes. I feel
we know you're a
CDs,
fan.
Right? Oh, wait, they're not CDs, right? They're MP3s, right?
Oh, you totally dated yourself again. If somebody wants to follow you, Bruce, and the interesting conversations you're having with the leaders in business, and they want to pick up any of your number written, you've got 2 books now, right, Bruce?
I have 2 books, and I write a column for Forbes, which oddly enough is more about entrepreneurs and business disruption models and technology than it is about marketing. But so I do write a column for Forbes. So hopefully folks can find my work there as well.
And if somebody wants to find your blog or follow you, Augie, what's the best way they can do that?
Of course, I'm on Twitter at Augie Ray, AUGIERAY, and then I write a blog that I try to maintain with as much time as I can find at experiencetheblog.com, all one word.
And I highly recommend following him as well, both guys. And then Chris, the snarky fan here. What if somebody wants to follow you, Chris, your work and learn more about what you're doing? How can they do that?
So Twitter at C Baccus. I also do a couple blogs. One is gasstationtacos.com, which is just reviews of gas station taco joints. So if you're really into that stuff, go ahead and check that out. But I also do, on the weird perspective, I do a sustainable dad blog, which is a food and parenting blog focused around sustainability. And don't ask how those two actually intermingle. They don't. They're completely juxtaposed to each other. There's no rational decision between them both existing in the same person. But they're there.
Gas station tacos. My stomach turns, and I think. But you've been writing about that forever, and you've been very successful.
Is that a big thing in LA? Gas station tacos?
It was a big thing in Dallas when I lived there. When I was head of social media over at AT&T, I've just carried it with me to LA now. Not as many, unfortunately. So not as many reviews lately.
Ugh, gas station tacos.
Great title.
Well, thanks again, everyone. I appreciate you coming on the show today, and I look forward to having you all back.
Yeah,
thanks
for having me.
Thanks, everyone. All right.
Well, that wraps up this episode of Marketing Mavericks. I've been your host, Tonya Hall. You can follow me by going to Twitter, verified or not, at Tonya Hall Radio. You can find me on Facebook, Tonya Hall, or connect with me on Google+. If you want to give us suggestions about what you think or who you think should be on Marketing Mavericks, you can email us at mavericks@twit.tv or find me on Twitter. Use hashtag Marketing Mavericks. That'll be a wrap. Thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time on Marketing Mavericks.